Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 48. I'm coming straight from Vienna. I arrived home today at like 11 a.m. And now we have 7:30. The MotoGP race is basically over since half an hour
hmm
or maybe 40 minutes. And my mom is coming to visit tomorrow, so I just wanted to get it out today. And Keelan was so friendly to join me again and is is basically sacrificing his night sleep because you're an hour later than me, right?
Hour behind
And
you.
for an hour, so it's half
It's
past six.
it's 6:30 here.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I thought it was half past eight, so yeah, you're not sacrificing your sleep then, I guess.
No, but I'll take the credit where I can get it.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for being here and hello.
Yes, hello Leo. Good to talk to you again. And of course everybody else, hello and welcome back once again to the Bad MotoGP podcast. We are coming literally straight off the heels of Qatar. Absolutely crazy weekend of action. We have got so much to talk about in pretty much every class, which is always great for us because we love the content and we need the content. But yes, great to be back, Leo. Great to speak to you again. First of all, how was Vienna?
Beautiful.
Mm.
Very, very beautiful city. And we arrived there on Wednesday evening. And basically you come out of the airplane and into the airport, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Even the toilets are the public toilets there are more luxurious than my toilet here at home. It's crazy good there, and you even had warm water to wash your hands afterwards. You never get warm water to wash your hands. And then like coming from the airport into the train station was normal train station, but into the city, just a beautiful city. It's very, very nice to visit city who haven't been bombed out in the Second World War, because that's basically every city in Germany. It's hella ugly because everything was built in the 50s and just rapidly building and not looking for aesthetics. So yeah, it's very, very beautiful in Vienna, and we went to watch a musical, which was nice. You know, every man is like a certain percentage gay, and my gay part is being fan of musicals. My girlfriend introduced me to it, so what's like my 5 or 10% gay is liking musicals. We watched The Lion King. We watched, I don't know the English names. It's the translation would be Dance of the Vampires. I don't know if it's called the same in English. And now we watched the musical Rebecca, and
Oh.
those three are like my favorites. We watched a couple others someday, but like in Vienna, we watched Rebecca. It was awesome. We went to a couple of museums, like the Nature Museum, the Art Museum, the Sissi Museum, and we wanted to go to the Museum of Illusions, but didn't go there because we were so tired and wanted to go to sleep. So we came back yesterday, basically, to my girlfriend's flat, and now I'm in my apartment since today. Yeah, the travel back was a pain in the ass because the train was 2 hours delayed, and yeah, but everything in the end went more or less fine. We got home early enough to watch the sprint race, which was all that mattered. And yeah, now I'm here to watch the MotoGP races, and now I'm here to discuss everything with you. So, what did you make out of DGS first win? I mean, it was just amazing.
Oh man, it's a beautiful story. It really, really is. I love every single bit of it. You know, the young kid without a ride for next year all of a sudden becomes the best rider in the paddock. He's got such good pace ahead of everybody else, and he rode unbelievably well today. You know, for those who didn't get to see the race, Pecco Bagnaia basically turned into Jorge Lorenzo and dominated the whole race as he normally does. Got out in front, never really looked back. But Fabio Di Giannantonio, unlike pretty much any other rider, was actually able to keep up with Pecco the whole race, where Pecco normally gets away. And so I thought, okay, this isn't going to happen, is it? You know, Di Giannantonio is not going to beat Bagnaia in Qatar, is he? And then with about 6 or 7 laps remaining, Di Giannantonio cuts up the inside of Pecco, gets out in front, and I start to think the dream's real, the dream's going to happen. And then at the end of the straight, with about 3 or 4 laps to go, Pecco tries to get back in front, completely overshoots it, nearly takes them both out. And then Digi does it. Digi does it, and Digi's done it. It's absolutely fantastic, and I genuinely couldn't be happier for him. You know, he's such a good kid. You know, many would argue that his exit from the team, from the Grassini team, is deserved. Some would argue they pulled the trigger too soon. But all I'm going to say is, VR46, are you watching? Are you watching what's going on? Because you have your next rider there, and his name is Fabio Di Giannantonio.
I mean, with the Luca Marini thing, first of all, I don't know. Because if Luca Marini indeed is leaving for Repsol, I, as Valentino Rossi, would also choose Fermin. Easy decision. But yeah, to go back to your first part, I wonder if anybody doesn't watch the races and
Ah,
then
yeah.
watches our podcast. So I would say the chances are slim. Please let me know if you do,
The
because
people know. The people know.
that would be ridiculous. And
But we're ridiculous.
sorry, my microphone was off for a second. But yeah, ChatGPT couldn't have summarized the races any better. And regarding like Digia, I mean, even watching the race, I thought no way he's going to overtake Pecco. Like on paper, Pecco is clearly the better rider. On paper, he's in a
Mhm.
better situation leading the race. On paper, he has the better team with the better bike because it's like the factory team and the factory bike. It can't get better than this. And still, despite all of the odds against him, Fabio Di Giannantonio won the race. And like with the decision from Gresini, they would have done the same decision even now because it's Marc Marquez. And the other thing is, like, when they made the decision in Indonesia, that was literally his first race where he was good.
Yeah, that's true.
So he started being good way too late, but I'm all here for it. And honestly, that moment when he overtook him, and there was this brief period of time where you thought, okay, maybe Pecco overtakes him back on the cutback, but then he didn't. And then this long straight, I mean, it looked like he was caught in a slipstream or whatsoever, because he's been riding the whole race out in front without no slipstream, so he has his braking markers there and there and there, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden you have to brake a little bit earlier when you're in the slipstream, and I can only imagine how difficult this is. And you know, if he indeed wiped Digia out in the same corner he wiped Martin out, then Qatar is definitely cursed. And I think it would be like double stupid, because now Digia wouldn't have won a race and he would have thrown away the golden opportunity to win the championship again. But yeah, regarding Digia, I'm so happy. I just hope he gets the Repsol Honda seat and Marini doesn't go, because why would he? You know, I still don't understand. But it was just amazing. And out of all Ducati riders, that it was Digia to beat Pecco was just amazing, because you know, I'm happy for him. I'm very, very, very happy. And I couldn't contain my excitement while watching the race. It was very, very nice.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And look, nobody could. You know, everybody in the paddock realistically wanted to see Digi get it done, and I'm so happy that he did. I know it's not the primary discussion of what we're talking about, but for whatever reason, I don't know either. For some reason, Luca Marini seems pretty dead set and going to Repsol Honda. Again, I have no idea why, but this seems to be the move that's happening. And now we have this discussion of who goes to VR46. And realistically, it's either Fermin Aldeguer or it's Fabio Di Giannantonio. And
Or Tony Avolino, they're talking about him too.
or Arbolino, yes, but I don't see how this makes any sense either. To be honest, that's just my opinion. But we move on from that. In my opinion, and I'm not just talking about the Gian Antonio's recent spur of form, which has been incredible. You know, if you're looking for a rider to replace Luca Marini, Di Giannantonio has 2 years of MotoGP experience under his belt. He knows how the Ducati rides now. He seems to have unlocked something. And he's on a red hot run of form. You know, as far as I'm concerned, it seems like the obvious move, but VR46 play their cards very close to their chest, so we really don't know. But I do think everybody can agree that if he's left without a ride for next year, it would be pretty criminal if Gian Antonio was left out in the cold.
Yeah. I mean, I have to disagree with you on the VR46 part because I think Fermin makes total sense. They're in a situation where they have the best bike on the grid, GP23. We don't know how good the GP24 will be. Maybe they will take a shit like they did with the GP22.
Mm,
And then you have the perfect surroundings and the perfect structure to build up a young talent like Fermin. And what he's doing at the moment is just spectacular. We will talk about him when we arrive at
mm,
Moto2 time. But honestly, if I was Valentino, I would pick Fermin as well over Digia because he's far superior when it comes to raw talent. And if I was Honda, I would pick Digia because Digia is like the perfect man for the job, and he's now on paper more successful than Luca Marini. So Luca Marini couldn't get it done on multiple occasions, and Fabio Di Giannantonio now won a race. So it's quite obvious to me, but still, from Luca Marini's perspective, I don't understand why he would go to Repsol. It doesn't make any sense for me, since he said he wants to win, and he won't win at Honda.
mm-hmm,
That's 100% sure, or 100% certain, I should say.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, to wrap this whole discussion up, I would, if Luca Marini goes, I would take up Fermin. But if I was Honda, I would pick up Digia.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I just think for Fermin Aldeguer, it's too soon to put him up in the MotoGP. I mean, look at Remy and look at Raul Fernandez. We've seen two raw talents burned out from going up too soon. I
But that
think
was KTM. That was not Ducati.
that is true. Yes, that is a fair point. It was KTM. I do think, however, give Fermin Aldeguer one more year, and then at the end of 2024, when all the contracts are up, get yourself a better seat. You know, I don't think, or yeah, I know the seat would be going to Ducati, but if I'm Ducati, the way I'm looking at this is I'm putting Digi in VR46, giving Fermin one more year, and then say, for example, Franco doesn't work out at Pramac, you have someone you can bring up in 2024 who you could argue is just as good of a rider. So, in my opinion, I'm giving Fairman one more year of experience in Moto 2. He might well win Moto 2 next year. He has that year to mature, he has that year to develop, and then you've got a much better rider coming up anyway.
I don't think this would be a smart move because if I'm Fermin and I now have a MotoGP offer on the table on Ducati, I mean, even if all the contracts are up next season, he won't get a better seat. I mean, yes, Pramac potentially, but VR46 is as close to perfection as it gets when you are looking for a seat.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we don't know if the Ducati contract with VR46 is expiring after 2024 as well. So that could be something where Valentino goes to Yamaha. There have been speculations, but I would like to make one quick point to Fermin and his MotoGP move,
Mm-hmm.
because if you have an offer on the table, take it. Look at Alonso Lopez. He was the superstar of Moto2 at the end of last season, but for some reason he couldn't build on this success. And Joe Roberts had a MotoGP offer in 2020, I believe, for
For
Aprilia.
Aprilia, that's right.
Look how this played out. This was a catastrophe for him now to not take the seat. And if you have one, you don't know what's coming next year. Maybe he will win the title. Best case scenario, he will be in the same situation as he's now. Worst case scenario, he won't get offered a seat because he's now not even a championship contender anymore. Could potentially be. Look at Alonso Lopez. And at his form at the moment, I would just take the MotoGP seat if I was Fermin. And I totally understand that Bosco Scuro wants to see some money to let him out of his contract, but
Hmm.
still, there's no argument that makes me think that staying in Moto 2 would be a good idea. But at the end of the day, we will see. We don't know. And I would quickly discuss the whole title thing. Let's start off with Pecco because his start was phenomenal. He
Oh.
was in a perfect situation. And let's not forget, he was having a drag race against other Ducatis. And
Hmm.
as far as I'm concerned, those Ducatis are equipped with the same ride height device or starting device that Pecco is. But
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure, could be wrong. But I don't see a reason why Ducati wouldn't do this, especially after KTM's at the beginning of the season smoked all of them. They have an interest in providing those to the satellite teams as well, even if they're on older machines. But yeah, I think Pecco had the perfect launch. He was in first after the first corner. He controlled the race. Everything looked perfect. And he just did what Pecco does when the pressure is on. He's just good. I mean, I can't explain it, but he doesn't fuck it up. He makes no mistakes. And like the thing with Digia, after Digia overtook him, he made this one tiny mistake which could have gone wrong but didn't. And then he accepted, okay, I will take second, everything's fine, because there was no need to overtake him. And I don't know what this whole mapping 8 thing was.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I
know
saw
what
that.
what the 4 zeros were, because we know that mapping 8 in the past, when Jorge Lorenzo was riding for Ducati, meant let Dovi pass. And I don't think that Ducati would be this stupid to protect or try to protect Pecco against Digia, because he doesn't have a contract. There is nothing Ducati can do from the box to stop him to go for this overtake. I don't know what those 4 zeros meant on the pit board. Maybe it was a situation where Ducati said, okay, mapping 8 means you're good to go. But
Mm,
why tell him? Because he will go anyways.
yeah.
And it, I don't know. I would love to find out. Maybe something will pop up tomorrow after they interviewed all the riders, and maybe Ligia is generous and tells us what mapping 8 really means, if it's still the same or not. But 20 points for Pecco are so valuable, especially after what happened with Jorge Martin. He just rode the perfect race and made this tiny mistake which cost him the race win. But at least he didn't take Didier out. This would be a catastrophe.
Mm.
But under pressure, Pecco is working, and it looks like now he's on his way to go to Valencia to win the World Championship and do it like in similar fashion like last year, where he has good cushion over his title rival and can manage the weekend quite well. So I think, I mean, if he doesn't injure himself or whatsoever, that he should be world champion in Valencia.
Yeah, listen, Pecco's in an excellent position and he deserves a lot of credit for it. Especially after Saturday's sprint race, where a lot of people question where Pecco was at. You know, Jorge Martin did what he does and he kind of blew everybody else away in the sprint race. People were wondering, is Pecco going to be able to respond? How's he going to respond to Saturday's physicality? And Pecco responded the best way he knows how to, which is getting out in front, getting a launch ahead of the rest of the Ducatis and controlling and manipulating the race. He does it better than anybody on the grid. And he did it very, very well. It just so happens to be that Fabio Di Giannantonio was the X factor today. He was able to get ahead, do his thing. But Pecco, like you said, I couldn't have said it better. 20 very, very valuable points going into Valencia, a 21 point lead into this final weekend. Realistically, a good sprint race for Pecco could decide it ahead of Sunday, but he leaves in a much better position than he entered into Qatar, and it shows a lot of character that he was able to do that. So Pecco deserves a lot of credit. He did very nearly spell disaster, but he didn't, and that's what matters. So credit to him. He goes into Valencia in a very good place, in a very good position.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the points. So Jorge Martin is wait a second, I need to calculate. No, those are still the old points. Or
Yeah,
no, they are not. Wait a second. Um 437 has Pecco, that makes 21 points as
mm-hmm.
far as I'm concerned between Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia.
Yep.
So 21 points means, I mean, even if Jorge Martin wins the sprint race, if as long as Pecco's in the top 10 in the main race, then he should be fine. He can manage. Like, it's difficult to calculate with those stupid sprint races, but at the end of the day, he did everything right. And I'm wondering what happened with Jorge Martin. I have my suspicion, and I would like to hear yours.
Yeah, to be completely honest, Leo, I have no idea. I really don't. I saw what everybody else saw. Martin got an absolutely dreadful start off the line. You know, he was squirming and sliding all over the track, and it never got any better. In fact, it just got much worse for him. Now, my suspicion, and this is just a guess and a suspicion, nothing more than that. My suspicion is that maybe his rear ride height device locked up or something and it didn't disengage. But to be honest, I have no insider information beyond what everybody else saw. All I know is that he got a terrible start. He never recovered from the beginning of the race. And quite frankly, he was lucky to finish in 10th. It could have been a lot worse for him. So I'm really curious actually to hear your thoughts on this too.
I don't think it's the right height. I think we would have seen it if it was the right height.
Yeah, true.
And I believe it's either tire or electronics, but
Mm,
tire is more likely that something with the Michelin tire was up today. He started on the dirty part of the circuit.
hmm
So, but that wasn't an issue yesterday. So who knows? And it looked like at the beginning that his rear tire just started spinning. So either the rear tire has no grip or the electronics failed on him a little bit. But then during the race, he lost so much time on acceleration. He was good on the brakes. You saw this from the Maverick Vinales onboard,
hmm
but it looked like he had no rear grip at all. And it makes a little bit sense that he just was unlucky with a bad rear tire. And this is sad that it costed him, because it was one thing that he fucked up the start, but then he couldn't hold the pace at all, and that was very weird. And um, totally understandable that he's angry, totally understandable that he's frustrated, but it's just one of these things you can't influence. Pecco just got lucky in this sense, and Jorge Martin unlucky. I think it's just a tire that was bad.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I do want to dispel a myth straight away because I've been seeing this a lot on social media. There's a lot of people who are making claims that Michelin sabotaged Jorge Martin's rear tire or something. And I just want to say that I think that's absolutely ridiculous, okay? I don't think Michelin are going around sabotaging people's tires before the race. I think that's completely and utterly ridiculous to even suggest that. I just think he got really unlucky, like you said. Maybe the traction control unit wasn't working. Maybe it was an electronics thing as well. But I think to suggest that there's something nefarious going on is completely. I mean, MotoGP, if anything, have an interest in making Martin's bike work because they're dueling for the championship. It makes no sense to sabotage one rider over the other. If anything, if Martin was miles better than Bagnaia, then I'd be suspicious. But to imply that there's something going on because of that makes no sense whatsoever, in my opinion. Either way, Martinez has every right to be frustrated because it's not his ability that let him down, it was a piece of equipment that did. And now, unfortunately, he has to have the weekend of his life and pray other things go right at Valencia just to have a chance? Because right now, Pecco Bagnaia holds all the aces.
Yeah, I mean, with 21 points down, he and 37 points to get, there is basically no way realistically that he wins the championship, except Pecco crashes or gets taken out or has a technical problem, which
Mm,
also could happen. But even if Pecco has like a bad tire like Jorge has, even if he gets like a tire pressure 3 second penalty, still unlikely with this amount of gap.
mm,
But I would like to talk to you about Enea Bastianini,
mm-hmm,
because Enea was so good last weekend that we thought, okay, he is back. And in Qatar, where he won last year, he can be good again. And now he set fastest time of the race towards the end, but it was too little too late. And I don't know what happened there with him. I don't know why he was so slow after his success in Malaysia. But I just think this kind of sealed the deal that he will get demoted to Pramac.
You think so?
I mean, I was on board with Enea Bastianini being in the factory team after last weekend. But to be now outside of the top five,
Hmm.
it's a tough argument to make.
It's definitely not an easy argument to make. I will concede that it's not an easy case to make either. I think as far as Enea Bastianini goes, from what I saw in the race, he started and he got caught up in the pack with everybody else around the middle of the pack, and he just found it really tough to kick on from there. Not like Jorge Martin at all, but he definitely struggled to get back into form and to get anything going. As far as why he finished the way he did, again, I really don't have any answer because he set the fastest lap of the race, like you said, but he just seemed to struggle with something. I don't know if it was electronic. I don't know if it was maybe a tire issue, but I really don't know what it is at all, and that's the God's honest truth. Whether that sealed his fate or not, as to whether he gets demoted or not, I don't know. I really have no idea. But I do think it would be harsh based on how much injury he suffered this year. You know, we saw last weekend how utterly dominant he was. This weekend he struggles a little in Qatar. I know we're just offering our opinions on this, but I think it would be harsh to demote Inea based on this year. I do believe that because I think if he's fully healthy, you see how good he is. But that's just my 2 cents on it.
I think the health argument is out of the window after Malaysia. I mean,
Okay.
if he was able to finish in the podium in the sprint and win the main race, there's no real argument why he shouldn't be at least in the top five. I'm not saying win, but being in the top five as a factory Ducati rider. And I still believe that he struggled with one lap pace and was therefore not able to qualify well enough, because during the race he was good, but he just was stuck in traffic. He wasn't good at the beginning of the race, and then towards the end, like he always does, he was super fast. And on a track where he won last year and now being healthy again, having won a Grand Prix, and to put that into with a comparison to what Jorge Martin is doing, yes, he took a shit today, but it wasn't his fault, I would assume.
Hmm.
And also, what he did in the sprint was just incredible. And I think Jorge Martin earned this one fair and square. And yeah, nothing else to add there. I
Yeah, look,
just think that it sealed the deal.
Yeah, look, you could very well be right. In fact, if I had to bet, I'd probably bet that you are correct and that that's probably what's going to happen. I just think with Enea Bastianini, to pin his maintaining or demotion on three last races, I personally just have a different view on it. I think it's a little harsh, but I also see where you're coming from. If you can do it well on one track, why can't you do it well on the other? But I think as well with Qatar, Qatar's a very unique track in that if you're not able to follow a very thin racing line, you're basically out on dirt ice. And a lot of riders struggle with that over the weekend because it's such a fine margin of racing and overtaking. You know, if you're off that line even by a millimeter, you can't overtake. You really can't. That being said, there are questions to be asked as to why Bastianini can qualify better. I don't have the answers for that. Only Bastianini and his side of the garage have the answers for that. But look, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. There's still a lot to play for. There's a lot of action to go with next weekend, and we'll really take it from there and see what happens.
Yeah, I would like to talk to you about Alicia Spargaro
Oh boy.
and have a little rage there because Aleix has a history of being angry. There
Yeah.
was this viral video of him shouting at his mechanics. He's more or less every weekend angry at somebody.
Mm,
And first of all, this is not a personality trait that any world champion has.
I agree.
Name one world champion in, let's say, MotoGP. Forget the 500s because I don't know what the fuck was going on back then. But one MotoGP world champion had those anger issues. I can't recall anybody. The closest thing would be Fabio because he was a little emotional at times, but nothing close to Aleix. I don't want to compare those two.
Mm-hmm.
And in a situation where there were yellow flags on track and he overtook Frankie overtakes him back in a free practice session. It doesn't even matter. First of all, the lap wouldn't have mattered
Mm,
because of the yellow flag. Then it's a free practice, so you can be last, and it wouldn't going to affect you.
mm-hmm.
And to punch somebody in the head, this has nothing to do in professional sports. You know, I'm a very, very big fan of the idea of letting guys fight after they take each other out. You know,
Yeah.
if I was Ayumu Sasaki, I would have wanted to ride to punch Adrian Fernandez. And that that Aleix is just punching Morbidelli after he himself basically made a mistake. Couldn't even stop the bike properly because he wanted to bump Frankie out of track in like what was it? Turn 1, 2, 3, 4, turn 6. It should be turn 6.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. It was a very, very costly slap. It cost him €10,000. It was nothing which hurts him because he's, I've seen his car in person. He's arriving with a private jet. He's not short of money.
Mm,
But I mean, it's just utterly ridiculous to punch somebody. And then he has to have a 6 grid place penalty. You
mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Yep.
And gets wiped out by Miguel Oliveira and injures himself and couldn't complete the Grand Prix. So this was like karma at the highest level. But I
Mm-hmm.
think he should have gotten a very, very harsh penalty because it has no place in MotoGP or any other sport except MMA. There
No,
you can punch other people. And he himself has a history of holding other riders up on their fast laps.
that's
There's this
true.
famous picture of Valentino Rossi with the middle finger. It was directed at Aleix Spargaro. And to be such an emotionally undeveloped human being to rage at somebody in a free practice session is just an embarrassment, and I would like to see harsher penalties on those kind of stuff. I don't care about track limits and all of this shit. Like, explain to me how Vicente Perez today didn't get a long lap, but who cares? I mean, this is what the stewards are for, and I think it's utterly ridiculous, especially after they made him start right next to Morbidelli.
Yeah, I want to be very clear straight off the bat that what Alicia Spargo did was absolutely unacceptable and completely unjustifiable. Not just the action, but a free practice session. I mean, Jesus Christ, what are we doing here? And the thing is, you can't even defend it as Morbidelli just holding him up. Because yes, Morbidelli holds him up, that's fair, but then Morbidelli gets past him and Leish slams into him to get past Morbidelli again. Look, it's completely unjustifiable, it's unacceptable, and he should have been black flagged straight away. The second that happens, he should have been brought into the pits and he should have been suspended for one race minimum. You know, like you said, a €10,000 fine's a joke. A sixth place grid penalty is a joke because neither of those things have enough of a deterrence or an effect on Alicia Spargo. And how Morbidelli didn't get off his bike and punch Alicia Spargo's head in, I don't understand. Because if he'd have done that to me, I would have done a lot worse than Franco Morbidelli did. So credit to Franco for being as cool and calm as he was, because there's a lot of riders who would have taken that much worse, and they would have been right too. As far as the emotional act itself, I think with Alicia Spargo, Alicia's very personally invested in Aprilia. You know, he's been part of the project since the beginning. And I think whenever they do bad, he takes it very personally. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, you're invested in the team, you're the face of the team. That's all well and good. I have no problem with that. But taking your emotion out on somebody else is completely unacceptable. And hitting another MotoGP rider is immediately, that's a no-no. I don't care what the reason is, especially not in a free practice session. This is inexcusable. Casey Stoner did it years ago and he got a fine for it as well. I think it was €5,000 back in 2011. Realistically, the penalty should have been so much harsher than it was, because that was just absolutely off the table. Cannot happen, and it cannot be allowed to happen. And all Alicia Spargo has done this weekend is completely let himself down, and he should be ashamed of himself because that was embarrassing.
Yeah. And they have a history, I mean Aprilia,
Mm-hmm.
and also Aleix, they have a history that they fuck shit up when they're in a good situation. It has a lot of different reasons and a lot of different problems, but I can recall so many races where I thought, okay, Aprilia is good, and then they fuck it up over and over and over again. And especially like Aleix, you're used to it with Maverick. Okay, it's just Maverick, but he doesn't harm nobody. And look at Jerez, look at Argentina, look at now even Qatar. He was in a good situation in Qatar, but for some reason he can't keep it together, and I think this is the emotional immaturity, and you need to be calm. You need to be
Yeah.
calm to function. You see it in MMA a lot. When people get angry, they have holes in their striking,
Mm-hmm.
and to come out and say, okay, I wanted to hit him on the shoulder is just ridiculous. It's quite easy to hit somebody in the head, especially if they have a helmet, because it's a biggest area, and the
Exactly.
shoulder is quite small, especially when you punch from the side.
Yeah.
And to not own it is even worse than committing it itself.
Mm.
If he came out and said, hey, I'm sorry, I did this because I was emotional, I fucked up, I'm truly sorry, but don't justify it. It's incredibly stupid. And look, Romano Fenati has a history of raging, and look where his career is now.
Mm.
And I just think there's no place in our sport. Let them fight if somebody takes somebody out, and if they want to scrap it out, I'm all here for it. But John McPhee and Jeremy Alcoba, or
Yeah.
Jaume Masia and Raito Toba, this was funny, but not this one. And I just hope that it gets now to a point where Aleix has a serious look in the mirror and says, okay, it cannot go on like this. Because it's also utterly ridiculous to come over as such a dickhead on TV,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
that's how you are presenting yourself to the world. And yeah, enough of Aleix. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Marc and to Fabio, because
Mm-hmm.
they did amazing on their respective shitboxes. With Marc, it's crazy. You see it on the onboard from the Ducati, how bad this thing is on acceleration and
Oh God,
top
yeah.
speed. It's terrible. And also Fabio, Fabio usually can't overtake because of his bike, not because of his abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a very, very good race when you consider all circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I believe Frankie had a good race today.
Frankie did
Let
have a
me
pretty
check.
good race, yeah.
He was in 16th, but he was further up the grid at some point. Joan Mir got 2 points, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joan Zarco, I think he helped Jorge.
Yeah.
I think his pace was better than that.
Did you
But
see? Sorry to interrupt. Did you see his last minute suicide dive on the last lap
yeah,
to try
yeah.
and get in front of Mark?
Oh no, in front of Mark I didn't see.
Yeah,
Maybe I
I
was I
think on
was
the
making
last,
memes.
I think on the last lap was it Mark? Who was it that was behind Martin in 11? Somebody was behind Martin, and Zarco tried to get back out and track and
It
protect
was Marquez.
Martin. It was Marquez, yes. Yeah, Zarco basically shot it out wide and tried to protect Martin's rear and get in front of the rider in front of, or the rider behind Martin, and he tried to suicide dive in front and he completely fucked it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah,
But
it was funny though. But yeah, shout out to Fabio, shout out to Mark, and I think you made a great point about the onboard. That Honda is terrible. It's so bad. That like Jorge Martin was behind Marquez at one point, and when they got onto the back straight, he just walked away from him. It almost looked effortless. It really, really did. And even Fabio at one point, I think, overtook Marquez and made it look pretty easy too. So it really speaks to how bad that bike is and why Luca Marini wants to go there. I don't understand it one bit.
yeah, let's talk a little bit about Moto 2 because
Mm,
Moto 2 was a little bit epic. I
a
wouldn't
little
say
bit
too
epic.
epic, but like Fermin, the first part of Fermin's race was just amazing. He went wide at some point early in the race, recovered all the positions, and then won. And there was a brief period where we thought, okay, Canet could win, but we should have known better. And Joe Roberts was fine, but then just
Just
put
fell
it into
apart.
R for racing mode and drove backwards. um, and Pedro, apparently he was sick. I've seen it in the comments. I don't know if this is true, but like he won the world championship. There's no need to risk anything. What if he injures himself and misses the Valencia test or whatsoever? So everything is fine for Pedro. And Manu finally was better than P5, and I
The
thought
P5
Canet,
curse is over.
yeah, I thought Canet overshot it in the last corner, but he actually had a very, very good last corner, and it was extremely tight between those two.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a little bit sad that Fermin is so good this late in the season. I would have loved to see it much earlier, and where Pedro was more or less on the height of his powers,
Yeah.
then I would love to see like a battle,
Yeah.
in like we had in America with Pedro and Tony. Like, what if Fermin was this good in Portimao or in Mugello? This would have been utterly amazing. But sadly, we didn't see it because then, when Fermin was good, Pedro was in a situation where it was totally unnecessary to battle with Fermin and to push because he would have gained nothing
Mm-hmm.
and lost everything. So, or potentially lose everything. Like in Thailand, for example, there was no need for Pedro to attempt to overtake Fermin. But at the end of the day, Fermin is exceptionally well. I would have loved to see him battle Pedro, like when it did matter for Pedro
Mm.
and where he wasn't in championship mode, because I think he could have maybe competed with him in Thailand, for example, if
Oh,
he
I know he
really
could have.
pushed it. If he really pushed, okay, but it still speaks volume to Pedro's talent that he's cruising around and still finished like P8.
Hmm.
So that was nice. And with Manu, yeah, I really hope that he can finally now be on the podium a little bit more often, because it felt like it was coming a little
Yeah.
bit, like with Zonta. You felt, okay, it could have come today, but it didn't, and then finally now. And it's good that it's not a P4. It's good that it's a podium.
Yeah, it definitely is. Listen, as far as Fermin Aldeguer goes, absolutely phenomenal race from him. It's kind of funny. We're talking about two riders for the same VR46 seat, and they've both had very similar seasons when you think about it. Both had pretty mid first halves of the season, and then in the second half, when it almost doesn't matter, they've been absolutely unbelievable. Di Giannantonio in MotoGP and Aldeguer in Moto2. In the second half of the season, he's just been lights out. He's been absolutely fantastic. But the sad part is that it came too late at a point when it didn't matter. And I actually think if Fermin Aldeguer had been this good at the beginning of the season, we'd have had a much more epic battle with Pedro than the challenge Tony Arbolino put up. It almost would have been like Remy and Raul all over again, but with Pedro and Fermin, and that would have been really, really good to watch. But listen, I'm not going to complain about it because we have our next star in Moto 2 potentially. I think Fermin Aldeguer, I kind of hope he's in the class next year because I think he will be the title favourite, especially in that Boscoscuro. He's been really, really good all season. Well, not all season, the second half of the season. He's gotten to grips with the bike. He knows what he's doing and he seems like he's got it figured out. So a lot of credit to him. He was absolutely brilliant. Manu Gonzalez, absolutely delighted for him. That kid is phenomenally talented. He's led that VR46 Master Camp team all season, and he's better than P5 now. And like you said, we knew it was coming, but I'm glad to see it. Fully deserved podium. And then Jake Dixon did what Jake Dixon normally does. He's good towards the end, but almost wins, but doesn't really. Aaron Canet did his thing. Joe Roberts completely fell apart. Which is a shame because he had a good qualifying and a good start of the race, but just fell to pieces halfway through. And Pedro Acosta did what he does. He's just rocking around doing his thing, got the title won, and he's going up next year. So yeah, Moto 2 was pretty good.
I mean, am I alone that, or do you agree with me that Moto 2 at the moment is by far the most boring class?
No, I agree with you. It says a lot about the state of the championship that Moto 2 can still be very good and be very boring, which is weird. It's just we have so much going on in MotoGP and Moto 3 that with Fermin Aldeguer being currently the best rider in the class, it's much more clear cut than the other two championships. So I certainly don't think it's unfair to say that it's the most boring because by definition it is. But again, as long as it gives us stars and it continues to develop talent, then we really can't complain at the same point because it's serving its purpose very well. And if Fermin Aldeguer does stay in Moto 2, he will be the title favourite next year.
Yeah. What was weird is that American racing is in the news again for all the wrong reasons.
Oh God.
They kicked out Sean Dillon Kelly in the midst of the season and then replaced him with Marcos Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
Marcos Ramirez pays them a shitload of money to race there, is on the podium, and now it seems like they kick out Rory Skinner despite Rory having a 2-year contract and replace him with Marcos Ramirez. And what is utterly annoying for me is when teams kick out riders with a contract. When the contract is expired, okay, just change the riders, everything's fair game. But this whole notion of like riders are really getting taken advantage of by those teams, and it's not good. They get way too their salary is way too low for the risks they're taking,
Yeah.
and they get treated like shit on top of it. And it's just sad to see. I really hope that something happens in the future to not see this again. And especially like with American racing, they have a history of being shitty. They have a history of not paying people. They have a history of being cheap and Now again, they have a history of kicking people out despite having a contract, and I don't know where this will go. It's a very bad look for American racing in general, not just the team.
Hmm.
So I really, really hope that something happens there and we can have a good team, like in terms of management, in Moto2 representing the United States.
Yeah, look, as far as because this obviously happened in between us being back on the show. As far as the American racing saga goes, disgusted doesn't even do it justice. Look, I get Rory Skinner hasn't been good this year. Okay, that's a fair point to make. He really hasn't done much. Even though I do like Rory Skinner, but this is just some cowboy bullshit, man. That's what it is, you know. The fact that these teams can come in, sign these riders, and not even getting danger money, they're not getting money that reflects what they are, and they can just be kicked to the curb at a moment's convenience. It's so wrong. It's so wrong. And all it's doing is hurting our championship and it's hurting our sport because we can't allow this to happen. I mean, what kind of message does this send to everybody else that, oh, look, in Moto 2 and motorcycle racing, some guy just got kicked out because they felt like it, and they brought in some guy because his daddy's rich and he can pay them the most money? It's absolutely disgraceful, is what it is. And to quote Jose Mourinho, if I speak, I'm in big trouble. So I kind of have to be very contained about this. But it's just absolute cowboy business, and hopefully nobody in their right mind will deal with American racing team again. Um, it's just a complete joke. I mean, Sean Dillon Kelly, we've spoken about this before. Sean Dillon Kelly was actually starting to turn the page, and you were starting to see good results from him. And then the second he turns good, you throw him away because Marcos Ramirez can give you money. You know, Rory Skinner has a 2-year contract. Oh, halfway through the first year, we'll throw him out just because we can get Joe Roberts back. I mean, it's absolutely wrong. It's absolutely abominable. And it's not just American racing team. They're just the latest example. They're the latest example of Moto 3 and Moto 2 teams being run shoddily and treating their riders like a bag of shit. And something has to be done about this because we are going to be in a very bad situation if this kind of behavior is not dealt with and stamped out. Of course, Dorna's not going to do anything about it because their interests are best served by these snakes that run these teams. You know, I'm sure they're paid to look the other way, and I'm sure they're serviced enough to not step in and do anything about it. But all these riders have to be treated better, and there has to be legislative protection for these people. Otherwise, I don't know where we go from here, but it's an absolute joke.
The thing is, Rory Skinner came from BSB,
That's true.
rode superbikes, and Sean Lennon Kelly as well came from Moto America riding superbikes as well. Cameron Bobier came over from superbikes, and Jake Dixon and Cal Crutchlow is like the most famous examples, or even Frankie Morbidelli came over. And there's a pattern. You see those riders getting better and better and better each season, but they won't be good in the first season. They won't even be good in the second season. And it's not only totally wrong for the reasons you laid out, it's also totally wrong because you ruin everybody's dream of going to MotoGP from the United States. Because imagine you have this super talented kid, extremely well, could compete with anybody in the world. And then you give him a contract, say, okay, 2 years, we will develop you and everything will be fine. If this kid is a little bit smarter than the average American, he will look up the history of the team he's signing with, seeing okay, they will kick you out after half a season, and say no, I will stay in Moto America. I make more money here, I'm more successful here, and I have my family here, I have my home here. So it kind of ruins the whole idea why this team was founded, and it's such a disgrace that they are allowed to do it. You know,
Yeah.
if they want to have Spanish and British and whatsoever riders, do it, fine. But hold yourself accountable if you sign a contract. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better, Leo. I really couldn't. And you've made the most important point that either of us have just made. Why the hell is an American kid going to want to pursue his dream in the world championship if he sees his countrymen and other riders being treated like this? Why are they going to put themselves out there and want to do it? They're not going to want to, because they're seeing snakes like the American racing team discarding their riders like they're garbage, and they're not. They're human beings with dreams and ambitions and aims and goals, and they're human beings that work their hardest and try their best and push their utmost. You know, Sean Dillon Kelly, for example, away from home, away from his family, away from his loved ones. Cameron Bobier was the exact same. Rory Skinner's the same. And people in that team, like John Hopkins, for example, who I'm very disappointed in, by the way, are meant to be looking out for these people and looking out for their best interests. And at the same time, they're going behind their back and stabbing them in the back and just throwing them away into the wind like it's nothing. I'm really fed up with this, and I'm sick of seeing this every single season. We are going to lose the next Nicky Hayden in this championship. We are going to lose the next Colin Edwards. We are going to lose the next Casey Stoner. We are going to lose the next great generation of Americans, Australians, British, Irish riders, because these teams don't have the integrity to run these teams properly, and they don't have a shred of integrity to honor the contracts that they make with these people. Something has to be done, or we might as well just start calling the World Championship the European Championship, and that will kill our sport. I'm not saying don't get the best Spanish and Italian riders. Don't positively discriminate against them. But we need these talents in this sport, because otherwise nobody's going to care about it outside of Europe. We need American viewership. We need Australian viewership. We need UK viewership. These people are going to kill this sport if they're allowed to keep going, and people are going to look the other way because right now it serves their best interests and they're not servicing the sport.
Yeah. To end this one, I don't think John Hopkins has a lot to say about these things. I believe his role is a different one. But at the end of the day, it's just speculation. We don't know. He's like the big, prominent face of the team. But I believe the shady shit is going on behind the scenes.
Mm.
So, yeah, we mentioned shady shit. So let's talk a little bit about Moto3.
Oh boy.
Because we now have another rage. And what's annoying for me is that we have a beautiful World Championship fight. We could have had the best fight since Pedro versus Foggia, and this one was a little bit anticlimactic because
Mm-hmm.
of Darren Binder. But I don't think Darren Binder did this on purpose. But he did it because he's stupid, and Adrian Fernandez did what he did on purpose, you know? I kind of understand, even though I don't think it's good, what Jaume Masia did today. Pushing Sasaki wide 2 times and uh, actively manipulating his race is not a good look,
Mm.
especially if you're ahead in the World Championship. It serves your interest if both of you finish lower than higher, because that way he can't make up a lot of a gap.
Mm-hmm.
Then he gets a conduct warning. First of all, I would have wanted this conduct warning after the first contact, not the
Yes.
second one. And after the second one, even though there's no rules to back this, I would have liked to see a long lap penalty,
Yeah.
because I would like the stewards to send a message: it's not okay to interfere in the World Championship fight. If you don't believe me, look under the MotoGP posts comments, look under Leopard's comments. Everybody hates it. 99% of the people hate it. And the other fans are probably Jaume Masia fans. So I think it's such bad publicity for the sport if you have a world championship ended in this way. You know?
Mm.
All I want is a good battle between the best riders. And the sad part is, Jaume Masia was the better rider today. He was the better rider over the entire season. He should have been world champion. It's the right world champion. It's not like disaster struck and somebody got a world championship without even deserving it,
Hmm.
But Jaume Masia was better. And even though I don't agree with what he did, it's in this gray area. Personally, I didn't like it at all, but it's when you take the rules, it's a little bit in the gray area.
Hmm.
But what I hated about Darren Binder, what I hated about Marc Marquez, what I hate about Adrian Fernandez is when you, as a third party, intervene in a world championship fight and actively manipulate a world championship. This is what gets me. I know it's your teammate, and look at Colin Vire. Colin Vire had all the opportunity in the world over the last couple of races and even today to just take Jaume Masia out. He could have done it, could have taken one for the team, probably got a big bonus behind closed doors, but he didn't because Colin is a racer who looks out for himself. That's
Hmm.
what every racer should do. If you can overtake somebody, overtake him. If not, do something like Johan Zarco did today and just stay behind. Who cares? And to actively manipulate another rider's race so a third party can win the world championship is ridiculous. I thought about my top 5 ways of ending a world championship, and I would start from number 5, which is the worst way, which
Hmm.
is Marc Marquez in
Yes.
2015. I think it was ridiculous to intervene with a championship where nothing had anything to do with you. It was 2 different riders from a different team, and to just manipulate it because you don't want one person to win is disgraceful.
Yep.
4, I would put Adrian Fernandez to take somebody out or take somebody wide whatsoever is not cool. Even if it's your teammate, it's not cool. And I would like to see some punishment if you interfere with the world championship. We all have telemetry on the bikes. We know if we look at the telemetry, if somebody opened the brakes or whatsoever, if they did anything different from other overtakes or whatsoever. And I think it's pretty easy to to prove that he did it on purpose. And if you have this proof, ban him for a year. Because I don't think what he did is worth a ban, but I think interfering with the world championship fight is something we should punish so hard that nobody else does it. And
Yeah.
that's like my thought behind it. Then top 3 is Darren Binder. He didn't do it on purpose, he's just stupid.
He's just incompetent.
Yeah. Then my top 2 is something which happened today in MotoGP, more or less, like technical failure. It's sad.
Mm.
But it is what it is. And the best way is to have the 2 best riders in the world battle it out without anybody interfering. Just have them battle,
Hmm.
like Valentino Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo in 2009. This is
Exact
just
example I
beautiful.
was thinking
This
of.
is just beautiful. Let them battle. Who cares? And I know, like, with a technical failure, you can't do anything about it. With Darren Binder dive bombing, he's stupid, yes, but it's still a sport which is kind of risky. You saw today with Pecco, overtaking is risky and shit can go wrong pretty easily. So, yeah, this is like my top 5 way of how a championship should end.
No, I first of all, great list. I got to give you credit for that.
Thanks.
I had it's so funny with your number one. I just said it there. My exact example was Valentino and Lorenzo in 2009. One of my favorite memories ever that season. There's a lot to break down here, so I'm going to do this in 2 parts. First of all, it's so ironic for me because for the past few years when we've done our predictions, I've always predicted Jaume Masia to win the championship, and the year he wins it, he pulls this shit. So I'm kind of let down in a way. Well, actually, not in a way. I am let down because I thought he was absolutely disgraceful. I thought he embarrassed himself. I thought it was very poor sportsmanship. The first incident at I can't remember what turn it is. It's at the hairpin
6.
and turn 6 at the hairpin. when he did it the first time, I thought, okay, he's overshot it. I can just about forgive that because he hasn't done this intentionally. The second time he did it at the exact same turn, I thought, okay, this is some bullshit. You know, there needs to be a punishment here for this. And I have to be honest, I was so let down by what Jaume Masia did today because I really couldn't agree anymore with what you said. He is the rightful champion. He's had the best season. He had the best race today. And whether it was today or whether it was Valencia, he would have been the rightful winner either way. And he didn't need to do what he did. But he just in a very pathetic manner, you know, he just slammed the brakes on. He forced Sasaki out wide twice. And to only get a conduct warning for it, I thought was so poor from the stewards. You know, like you said, give him the conduct warning the first time, give him a long lap the second time. You know, use your brain to judge what you're seeing and punish it accordingly. So Jaume Masia, I'm beyond disappointed and let down in because I thought he was better than that. Clearly I was wrong. Clearly you were wrong. Clearly we were all wrong. And yeah, I'm let down and I'm disappointed. Now this next part might be a little bit controversial, but hear me out before you judge. I don't think Adrian Fernandez deserves all the hate that he's getting, and I'm gonna explain why. The most important reason for this is yes, Ayumu Sasaki was forced down into the middle of the pack to compete for like P9, P7, whatever it was. Whether we love it or whether we hate it, and whether Adrian Fernandez happens to be the teammate of Jaume Masia or not, Adrian Fernandez has the right to compete for the position with Ayumu Sasaki, and there was no contact. So you can't really punish Adrian Fernandez for it. Now, did he hold him up? Did he maybe hold him back a little bit? Yeah, he probably did. But on the other side of that Adrian Fernandez coin, he has the right to compete to finish ahead of Ayumu Sasaki. Colin Vire, you mentioned him earlier. Colin Vire has every right to compete with Jaume Masia in the previous races. He has the right to compete for position. He has the right to get his elbow in and try and finish ahead of him. So Adrian Fernandez is kind of in a weird position here because he's drafted in to be the teammate of the rider when Ayumu Sasaki's been let go. So it's a very weird dynamic anyway. And he's in a position where he's protecting his current teammate, but he also has the right to compete. And I mean, I've seen a lot of very extreme comments on Adrian Fernandez's social media, and I see he turned his comments off. I think much more blame deserves to go to Jaume Masia than Adrian Fernandez. That's where I stand on it. Fernandez had the right to compete and he had the right to be competitive today for the position. But Jaume Masia himself should never have put Sasaki in that position down there. If you want someone to blame and you want someone to be angry at Jaume Masia.
I think that Adrian Fernandez, yes, he has the right to compete for position, but to force somebody out two times and open your brakes and just push him wide, yes, there was no contact because Ayumu Sasaki
Mm.
lifted his motorcycle up and avoided the contact,
Hmm.
then it's not fair anymore because it doesn't affect him personally. He's
Yeah,
not
that's
going for a
true.
world championship. He on purpose pushed somebody else out of track to make him lose positions, and especially in the last corner after this big ass straight, Ayumu Sasaki was still in a good position before he encountered Adrian Fernandez, and Adrian Fernandez pushed him wide two times, made him lose multiple positions, and put him effectively out of competing for the championship. Like Masia won today because Masia was the best rider today. Period.
Hmm.
But Ayumu Sasaki at least should have given the opportunity to fight for a podium spot. But he didn't because somebody else who had nothing to do with the world championship forced him out on purpose two times, make him lose multiple positions, multiple tenths or even seconds.
Hmm.
And I just think this is not acceptable behavior to just do it because your teammate is fighting for a world championship. This is the shit people are still mad at Marc Marquez for. This is like the exact same shit. And I absolutely don't agree with you. I don't agree with Adrian Fernandez because I think this is utterly ridiculous that we are now in a situation where other people get involved in a world championship battle. Yes, Colin Vaya was able to win in Malaysia. It's his right because races are there to race and not to take part. But to sacrifice your own race, to sacrifice somebody else's race, just somebody else can win the championship. This is not good. This is unfair and it's bad sportsmanship. And I think this should be penalized, especially if you could see in the telemetry data that he did it on purpose. And I'm 100% sure that you can see him opening the brakes there.
Yeah, listen, I want to be very clear about something here because there's two lines of thinking. So just allow me to clarify this. I absolutely disagree with somebody interfering with somebody else's race just to help your teammate or your countryman or whatever it is win a world championship. It's the reason I'm still bitter about 2015. It's the reason I still despise Marc Marquez for doing that and Jorge Lorenzo because Lorenzo knew what he was doing. So let's be clear about this. I want to make something very clear here in relation to Adrian Fernandez. If the telemetry shows that what he did was intentional, then ban him. Absolutely. I am not condoning what Adrian Fernandez did. Where I am siding with Adrian Fernandez is that a lot of people are criticizing Fernandez and saying awful things about Fernandez just for being in the position of competing. And we need to draw a clear distinction here. Fernandez has the right to compete for the position. What he does not have the right to do is to open the brakes on Sasaki and force him wide deliberately to help his teammate win. I am completely with you in that, Leo. I am not completely exonerating Adrian Fernandez. What I'm clarifying is that there are people online, and you can go and look at this yourselves, people. I'm pretty sure it's all still there. There are people who are criticizing and saying things about Adrian Fernandez just for competing for the position. That's not right because he is allowed to compete for the position. It's the entire basis of motorsport. What he's not allowed to do is open the brake intentionally and throw Ayumu Sasaki's world championship out into the car park. He's not allowed to do that. I do think, though, and I think where I agree with everybody, is that Jaume Masia is disgraceful, and what he did was so beyond wrong. Because we can debate Adrian Fernandez and whether the telemetry proves intent or not, but Jaume Masia put him down there because he ran him off twice. The reason Sasaki was even in that position is because Jaume Masia opened the brakes on him and forced him into that fight for P9, P8, that territory. So realistically, Jaume Masia should get all the hate that he deserves. I'm sorry, I have to say it. He deserves all the hatred. But Adrian Fernandez, there is a line that needs to be drawn. I'm with everybody else in criticizing him for opening the brakes and making him lose all those seconds. But if you're on the side of criticizing him just for competing, that's also wrong. So just make sure you know what side of the argument you're on, is what I'm saying.
I still think it's odd that we had 4 situations today where Ayumu Sasaki got pushed wide.
That is true.
4 situations by Leopard, 2 by Adrian Fernandez, 2 by Jaume Masia. And I I think there needs to be some kind of an example that people don't do this anymore. You
Mm,
know, ban somebody for an extended period of time. I know this is not going to happen. This is what I would like to have because I want to have a pure sport where sportsmanship and fair racing, fair and hard racing, like Pecco and Jorge Martin yesterday in the sprint. This was very hard. It's like on the edge, but it was fair.
Pecco
And
and Fabio
nobody,
last year.
Pecco and Fabio, Fabio, especially last year, he was on the edge a lot of times, but he was almost never over it.
Mm,
But what Jaume Masia and Adrian Fernandez did today, and Leopard, quite frankly, is just an embarrassment. I know there won't be any punishment, but I want to see something that nobody else would ever do this to somebody again.
mm,
Like, imagine you're Ayumu Sasaki. You want to have a fair opportunity to fight for a world championship, and other riders just push you wide because they can. And I've seen people saying Ayumu Sasaki wasn't aggressive enough today. He could have done the same. Yes, he could have. But what if he made Masia crash, Would have he gotten a black flag? Probably not. Like double long lap, okay, still makes up points.
Mm-hmm.
That Dennis Earnshaw, flying totally under the radar because of this, got a podium with a double long lap. He was amazing today.
Incredible.
And it's still possible, but he chose not to because he's a fair and good sportsman.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
it ruins the purity of a sport. It ruins the taste you get when you hear Jaume Masia world champion.
Mm.
It ruins the public perception of him.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe me, look at the MotoGP site's comments and look at the Leopard's comments. Even look at the comments under my post, and it's utterly ridiculous. I would like every person to put themselves into Jaume Masia's boots and then put themselves into Ayumu Sasaki's boots. Like, yes, if you're a Masia fan, you say, "Oh, they did nothing wrong." Like, if you're a Lorenzo fan in 2015, they also did nothing wrong.
Mm.
Officially, Valentino Rossi did something wrong. But we all deep down know if the roles were reversed, you would be as angry as everybody else.
Yeah.
And I just want to have a good, fair championship fight. Jaume Masia probably would have won in Valencia. At home, everything would be fine. He would have been the deserving world champion because Ayumu Sasaki is not able to win a race. He wasn't aggressive enough today in the first place in the race without those shenanigans going on. And in the past, he was not good enough as well to win races. And he would have been world champion if he didn't finish second all the time. But it is what it is. But still, I want to have a good fight for the championship, a fair fight for the championship, and just let him race without people interfering with it. And this also means like people interfering with one another, like Jaume Masia and Ayumu Sasaki. Like, this shit that happened between Alan Prost and Ayrton Senna, it was
Mm.
also shit. You don't want to have a world championship ending like this. So that's my 2 cents to it.
Yeah, look, and you're absolutely right, and nobody's going to disagree with you, and I'm not going to disagree with you either. It's a horrible way to end what has been a brilliant Moto3 championship, and the only person who's fucked themselves is Jaume Masia, because now his life's work it's a little bit. Let me give you a weird example. It's a little bit like Will Smith winning an Academy Award after he slapped Chris Rock. He's achieved his life's work, but now it's forever ruined because of one moment that he did. That's what Jaume Masia is. Will Smith, basically, is what I'm saying. He's climbed the mountaintop.
I disagree. I think Alicia Spargaro is Will Smith, but carry on.
Yeah, in spirit, Jaume Masia is Will Smith because he didn't actually slap anybody. But what I mean is, in those two comparisons, it's that Jaume Masia has climbed the mountaintop. He's won the moto. He's a world champion. But now that trophy is tainted because all anybody's going to think of now is, well, you had to open the brakes on Ayumu Sasaki twice and force him off track. That's all anybody's going to remember from this, is that his championship is tainted forever. And Jaume Masia has to live with that. And I know he said in the post race press conference that, basically fuck him and we did what we had to do. But in the days and weeks to come, when Jaume Masia is getting hate at every race he attends, he's going to realize that he made the mistake, because he probably would have won without having to do that. And he would have been the rightful champion even if he didn't do that. But now he has to live with what he's done. And I'm only sorry for Ayumu Sasaki because, like you said, and you're absolutely right to say it, Sasaki was clean, he was fair, he gave everybody their space, and he tried to win it the right way. And I wanted Jaume Masia to win today. I did, I'm going to be honest, mostly to make myself look good. But I did want to see Masia win this championship. Now I'm unhappy with it as well, because he had to resort to that to do it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, as far as punishment goes, I do agree. I want to see something done. The question is, what do you do? Who do you punish? Do you fine Leopard? Do you fine Adrian Fernandez? I mean, I really have no idea what we do, but now we're in a situation where nobody's happy about this because now Ayumu Sasaki, it looks like he's been robbed even when Masia was the rightful champion. Masia is ruined because he's a champion, but he's a moral failure. So now we're just in a terrible position, really.
Yeah. It's funny that Raul Fernandez is moral champion and Adrian Fernandez is moral failure. But you know what bums me out? First of all, this penalty has to be a penalty which hurts.
Yes, I
And
agree.
when you win a world championship, the penalty has to be very high that it overweights this world
Yeah,
championship thing. And second of all, I think Leopard was quite salty how 2021 ended, and then they had all their hopes in Dennis Foggia in 2022, and that one failed. They wanted to win the championship so desperately that they took all measures.
yeah,
And you could argue that they brought in Adrian Fernandez because of this. Maybe Tatsuki Suzuki wasn't going to play along, or they thought Suzuki wouldn't even be in the position to interfere with the World Championship. But at the end of the day, if you do something and achieve something through hard work, dedication, and you just do your best and win, it's the best feeling in the world. But if you do it and you know, okay, I got helped by Adrian Fernandez, I I took the wrong route and did something dirty. I do think that it's not the same feeling, and I think that maybe one day Jaume Masia will look back at it and say, okay, I shouldn't have done it, especially since he would have won the world championship to 99% anyways.
yeah. You're absolutely spot on. And listen, what the most disappointing part about all of this, I'll get onto your Leopard theory in a second. The most disappointing thing about all of this is that 90% of Jaume Masia's season has been hard work and dedication, and he's done it the right way. It's this final 10% that he's ruined for himself because he had to resort to dirty tactics and cheating to force Ayumu Sasaki off the track. Regardless of your argument, that is what happened, okay? I know I have a very slightly different view of Adrian Fernandez, but as far as Jaume Masia goes, that is what happened. And now we're in a position, like I said, where the championship is tainted because of this. And even on the TNT broadcast, with Neil Hodgson actually said this after the race. He said the championship's tainted because that's not how you want to win a championship. And it shouldn't be how you want to win a championship at all. You know, I would rather lose like a Yumi Sasaki than win like Jaume Masia. That's the way I will put it. I would rather lose with my head held high than have to cheat to win. And that's what Jaume Masia did. As far as your theory, I think it's interesting. There could be some merit to it. Obviously, we'll never know. We'll never be able to prove that Adrian Fernandez was brought in to block Ayumu Sasaki. Maybe it was, but unfortunately, we'll just never know at this point. But I'd rather lose like Sasaki than win like Masia. Let's put it that way.
To quote Francis Ngannou, I would rather lose a fight that I won than win a fight that I lost.
Couldn't say it any better. That's exactly it. You know, sometimes there's more merit to losing right than winning wrong, and that's what today was.
I also am extremely disappointed with the weekend because how Moto3 ended and also with MotoGP, it was quite bad that Jorge Martin suffered this
Mm.
tire failure, apparently. We will know more tomorrow after all the debriefs are done. But I don't leave Qatar with a good feeling. I expected more out of this weekend. I really hope that we get a good, fair race weekend in Valencia. But it's still sad that we have those two beautiful World Championship fights for different reasons going down the drain. So, thank you very much for joining me this late. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next weekend at the season finale in Valencia.